Hey everyone! Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate all of you. Just going to make this short and sweet. I'm very excited to have Martin here. He is doing us all a favor by gracing us with his presence. I know that he is a controversial figure, and some of you love him, some of you hate him. But he is someone that I've known for a while, so I feel very blessed that he has made time for me. And I hope that we can have a good stream and have a good time and learn something that we didn't know, something that's not in the other documentaries about him, because he is quite an interesting person, and so there's already so much about him out there. I'm sure most of you already know who he is. So without further ado, like and subscribe, and not only subscribe to me, but subscribe to Martin Shkreli, and let's have him up. Hey Martin, how are you?
Hey Lauren, how are you?
Good. I am so sad. I want to start off the stream by saying I'm sad that you're not here today. I know that we had planned originally to do this in person, but you're delayed 1 week. 1 week from now, you're going to be free to move around.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
That's pretty exciting. What is the first destination that you're going to go to?
Good question. I think my friends and I are planning a party, but other than that, just get back to living normally, I guess.
That's so fun. Yeah. And we also discussed you're going to be able to have your first glass of wine in a while. Do you know which bottle you're going to choose?
I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm excited to just do the things I missed out on doing for the last 5 years.
Yeah. 5 years is a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, what did you do to fill those 5 years? What was the thing that took up the most of your time during those 5 years to preoccupy you?
I'd say just, it's not that different from, regular life. Like spend a lot of time reading and writing and, learning things, and then just chatting with friends and stuff like that. It's sort of, all the same, as normal life. A lot of people feel like prison is the kind of thing that you just sort of disappear into, and where it's like really punitive. And in reality, it's just life keeps going, and you have to sort of do the same thing everybody else has to do, eat, sleep, do all the normal, day-to-day stuff, and talk to your friends, family, things like that. So it's really not that different.
Yeah. Did you read any good books while you were in?
Yeah, I read like hundreds of books. So it was definitely the main use of my time.
Yeah. What was the most interesting book you read while you were in? And anything that was like self-improvement-y that changed your perspective in life?
Yeah, I read a lot of those types of books. I read a lot of interesting business books and different like STEM type books. So pretty much a little bit of everything. There was a really good sci-fi book I read that I thought was really great, and there was also a number of like AI and other technology books that shaped my views quite a bit. So, but mostly I read nonfiction.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't. Okay. What was your favorite fiction book? Because I didn't even know that you read fiction.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of fiction, but I read a book called The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu. So he's kind of like this Chinese Isaac Asimov. I thought it was really interesting. It's a three-part book. I typically don't like sci-fi, but I also read all the other sci-fi stuff that I never read before, that like all the technologists say they're inspired by, like Neuromancer, Snow Crash, all that stuff. And I didn't like most of it, actually. Three Body Problem was my favorite, but I also liked Ready Player One. So I read a lot of that type of stuff. And then I also read some classic fiction that I might have missed out on in the past. So I didn't spend too much time with the fiction stuff, but I definitely enjoyed that Three Body Problem quite a bit.
Well, that's interesting. That's very cool. Thanks for the book review. I appreciate it. You're probably like the number one person to go to right now for book reviews because of all that time that you had. Did you work out before prison, and did you start working out more after prison?
I've never really been a working out kind of guy. I used to do a lot of like more like aerobic type stuff, and I sort of have just quit that since probably for a long time now, and prison didn't like inspire me to start working out or anything. I think a lot of people when they go to prison, they spend a lot of time working out to pass the time and to do other stuff like that. I was really busy during prison, so I had a ton of things to do. I was actually more I was busier. I was just as busy in there as it was outside, believe it or not. So it was like definitely like an extreme amount of you know work to do and things to keep track of. So working out for me just didn't have the time or interest to do it. I certainly have to, like all people, it makes sense to work out and be fit, but for whatever reason, I think there's people that'll just never do it, and I seem to be like one of them.
What do you mean that you're just as busy outside as in? Because you were, CEO of two. How many companies were you CEO of at the time prior?
Yeah, I think it was I had two, but your responsibilities don't go away just because you go to prison. You still have things to take care of, and I had more things to take care of than before actually while I was there. So it was really a lot of work.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about is actually what led you there because a lot of people are confused. A lot of people think that something to do with the price of daraprim, right? Is that the drug?
Yeah,
Or
daraprim.
daraprim? The price of daraprim is what led to the conviction. Is that true?
No, I was indicted on fraud charges, nothing to do with pharmaceuticals.
What what were the charges? What was that about?
Yeah, so I had a hedge fund um, like 4 or 5 years before the daraprim price increase that, uh, in essence, the prosecutors argued that I had misled investors, and that was what the trial was about. I think a lot of people feel like that trial was kind of pretext for price increases. But however, either way, I was convicted of some of the charges, and that led me to go in prison.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. Do you think you like learned from that experience?
It depends on how you look at it. I think we're always learning and growing and things like that. As you get older, you kind of can't avoid it. I think that specifically, there's certainly like some obvious learnings. Like one of the things I've learned over time is that healthcare is something that's really, really personal to people. The other thing I sort of figured out is that there are things that people don't want to hear inconvenient truths about, no matter how sort of true they are or obvious they are. They're things
Like
that
what?
society.
What's an example of an inconvenient truth?
Yeah, I
That
mean, I think like healthcare is a business is probably one of the biggest inconvenient truths that people don't like. Healthcare is is a human right, is something that people want to hear, but the business side of healthcare is something that people don't. And I think that there's you know a real hard digestion for a lot of people who'd rather healthcare be sort of provided in this sort of idealistic way, completely and totally for free. But the reality is, of course, that nothing's for free. We have to pay for those goods and services somehow. And as we desire more healthcare, the price of healthcare goes up. And I think that that's something that we can't avoid. And trying to sort of scapegoat somebody or anyone really into that, sort of being the causative agent of that is really disingenuous. Like right now, the insulin sort of providers are kind of in the hot seat for the rising price of insulin, but there's no real easy solution for that. And I think there's just like so much misplaced blame on something like that. And there's a lot of other inconvenient truths out there, and we tend to, as a society, to want to, some people at least, want to hear the sort of things that make us happier rather than the things that are necessarily true.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're a capitalist, though, right? Like you support capitalism, and you think that the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare industry can work in a way such that capitalism leads to the best results for those industries.
Yeah, of course. I think that's kind of what's happened, for a long time. that's the reason that's the reason life expectancy has grown so much. That's why there have been so many different great treatments and cures for diseases. And the pharmaceutical industry is the best, sort of in America at least, is by far the best in the world. That's created so many different great medicines. So I think it's somewhat obvious. Like I don't even think anybody could dispute it. So it bothers me that when people sort of blame drug companies when they rely on them as well. It's kind of like, well, which one is it? Do you not like medicine, not want medicine, or do you want this medicine to come out? Obviously, I think people kind of want this weird paradox where they want drug companies to make medicine really inexpensively, which obviously is at odds with the whole point. So I think it's a really weird sort of thing to hear, especially in America, when you hear people complain about this stuff, and then they kind of don't realize that there's an industry and a big sort of ecosystem that has to be there for this stuff to get produced and this stuff to get made.
Right. So, like, part of that, for instance, is after you put in a lot of effort for research and development, then you can patent your drug, and then that prevents anyone else from selling it, and you can really set the price, right?
Yeah, I think for all medicines, patents matters a lot, but there's also regulatory, sort of the regulatory compliance that's there too. You have years and years of time it takes to work with FDA or any other regulatory agency around the world to sort of get inspected and to get all your filings done right. There's millions of pages of paperwork to do, and it's really just an enormous amount of regulatory oversight that's probably necessary, but very tedious and difficult in the other. So you get sort of both that limit competition. So a lot of people wish there were more competition in pharmaceuticals that would drive prices down, but between the patents and the regulatory difficulty and the manufacturing difficulty, it really isn't easy to make insulin, for example. A lot of people think it's like, oh, some company can just come out with insulin tomorrow. It's like a 10-year process, especially to make it at scale. So it's a frustrating thing for a lot of people who are in this industry to hear the complaints about it.
Right. I mean, can you think of any solutions? And also, do you think that the length of the patent on drugs is the correct length? And yeah, is there any way that you could restructure this such that people are financially incentivized to produce more drugs or do more research and development while simultaneously are also incentivized to purchase the rights to use the patents and create these drugs?
Yeah, it's like I think we have a pretty good system. I do think that some patents, the fact that all patents have the same length is a little weird, and maybe there should be some changes to that. Of course, anytime you make changes to a system, there's unintended consequences that could be, really difficult to sort of undo. So you don't want to change the law every 3 years, every time you realize that you have created some unintended consequence. But there are some problems. For instance, like the Alzheimer's epidemic is coming as we live older and older, thanks to cardiovascular medicines or cancer medicines and so forth. We're all going to be 80, 90, 100 years old, and the senility and Alzheimer's the wave that's sort of coming for senior citizens or would be senior citizens is going to be enormous. And so we don't have a good Alzheimer's drug at all. And the industry has kind of had a hard time developing one. One of the reasons is patents expire after 20 years, no matter what. So if it takes you 10 or 15 years to create a drug, your patent's basically expired already by the time you come out with it. So I think we need to extend patents for those medicines that might take longer than normal, whereas some cancer drugs could be developed in just a handful of years, and they get extra long time on patent. So it kind of, there should be some normalization where it's like you get 10 years maybe on the market no matter what, as opposed to, well, it all depends on how fast you can get it approved, which doesn't seem to me like it should be an adverse incentive instead of, it should kind of be a positive incentive instead of an adverse one, if there's anything at all there. So imagine spending 15 years developing a drug and then you only get 2 or 3 years left because it took so long to develop your medicine. It really doesn't make sense. And we definitely need an Alzheimer's drug pretty bad because of, like I said, the demographic shifts that are happening in our country.
You don't have, I mean, as long as you don't publish your idea, right, then your patent time doesn't start. But is there a requirement for where you're not allowed to develop in secret in order for FDA regulations or something like that? Is that why people don't develop in secret?
Yeah, there's a tends to be this practice where after you make the invention, you file it, and you can sort of delay that. But I think in general, you're supposed to file right after you make the invention, because of the patent application has to, you want it in